now that we're done with who's going to win the league, it's equally important to figure out who might be in the places for the Champions League spot. Currently, Aston Villa are fourth, Tottenham fifth, United are sixth, and there could be a possibility that the fifth place also gets into the Champions League. But right now, it's Italy and Germany who have the points to have an extra team. But it remains to be seen how that progresses. For now, it's fourth spot for England, and right now Aston Villa are there, who have done, like we've mentioned throughout this episode, brilliantly to be where they are. But their run in towards the end of the season is going to be tricky because they're in the Conference League as well, and they play Lille in the Conference League. While there aren't a lot of, you'd say, quality teams with currently uh, currently who are so currently the Conference League has Victoria Pilsen, Fiorentina, Olympiacos Fenerbahce, Club Brugge, PAOK, and Aston Villa and Lille. You'd say Villa and Lille are would be two of the favorites to win the competition. So you'd expect Villa to at least make it to the at least make it to the final if they do win against Lille, and that will test their squad depth. And it will be interesting to see whether they'll focus on the Premier League or they'll just try and win a title with the Conference League like West Ham did last season. They also had the chance to make it to the top four, but then I think West Ham were it proved right for them to just focus on winning a title, and that is what they did at the end of it. So with Villa, we already mentioned a few of the games. They have to play City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, and I have them losing all three of those games. So yeah, then they played West Ham recently away. They drew against them. Now they are one of the teams uh, that have played one more game than the rest of those around them. They've played 29 games so far, and currently they are 3 points behind Spurs, ahead of Spurs, sorry. But Spurs have a game in hand, so have United. Spurs are on 53 points, United on 47. So they could close the gap easily with a win in the next games. Yeah, so it'll be tricky for Aston Villa to actually sustain their position, I believe. They have, after the international break, Wolves at home, which I think they'll win. Uh, what do you think?
So you said you have predicted Arsenal, I mean, we'll have to lose against Arsenal, Liverpool, and City. The
Yeah.
same for me. But interestingly, I have also gone for a defeat against Wolves after the international break at home. It's just that Wolves are a good team, and but then yeah, you would say Villa are better than them right now. But then I think when it comes to these teams, it's sometimes hard to predict. With Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal, you can Liverpool, City, and Arsenal, you can say, oh, they are expected to win all the games. But then it's a bit more trickier on these teams. But then I feel like they might begin with a loss against Wolves this weekend, and
And they
then
have City next, so you predict they'll lose that as well, which will
yeah, consecutive losses.
should hurt their top four chances.
Yeah.
After the City game, they play Brentford at home, and I have them I have them winning that game because I think after the loss against City, they will want to uh, keep their chances of getting into the Champions League alive. And I think with Brentford's current form, uh, Thomas Frank hasn't been getting the best out of his team. The home's crowd has not been the best, but they are playing away Brentford are away from home in this game, so the home crowd does not come into that factor. But still, I think Brentford have not built on what they did last season. But I still think Brentford will survive. They'll finish mid-table, so they won't have a lot of uh, they won't have uh, anything to play for really, because I think they'll easily survive the drop. So yeah.
Yep, that's a fair point. Brentford perhaps have not been as dangerous or tricky as they have been in the past couple of seasons, maybe. And obviously, they have had this thing with Ivan Toney not being available for the longest time. And right now, they sit, where are they? 15th in the table. You would expect them to be higher, but then they are 15th. They are sort of in the relegation battle. You cannot rule them out yet. But you would just think they would get like a couple of wins here and there, and then they just survive. But Aston Villa might not be one of those games. It could end up being a draw. I- Again, with these teams, it's hard to predict, but I would expect Aston Villa to get a win at home in that game.
Hmm. Then after the Brentford game, they have Arsenal away, and we've already predicted
Yeah.
them to lose that game. So yeah. So moving on to Spurs, I think they have Luton after the international break at home, and I think we've talked about Luton. We've said they've done amazingly well for the expectations that people had for them at the start of the season. They could very well end up surviving the drop, but I don't think at home against Spurs, while they have caused a few upsets recently with draws against some interesting top sides, I don't think they'll manage to win this game. So I have a Spurs win in that game against Luton.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it will win for Spurs. It's at home. It's after the international break. I think they will begin the run in with a win against Luton at home. Yeah.
Then Spurs have Villa away from home. Now, as we said, West Ham are one of those teams that do not really play on the front foot. They try to soak up pressure and then play on the counter. David Moyes likes to do that. They are defensively sound. They have been defensively sound in most games this season, apart from a few anomalies. Uh, and I think they will be tough to break down for Spurs. A Spurs side that has recently found it hard to find the back of the net. So yeah, I'd say this game away from home, uh, a London derby. I feel it'll be a draw. So I go with a draw.
Interesting. I mean, I have gone for another Spurs win. I might be like a bit Postecoglou biased because I have them to win their next four games, interestingly, which includes a trip to Newcastle as well
Hmm.
and trip to West Ham. Those two are tricky for Spurs by all standards, but then I'm expecting them to win the four games against Luton, West Ham, Forest, and Newcastle. I could be very much wrong because have Spurs won four games on the trot at all this season? I don't know. Let's see.
I think it's also this thing with Postecoglou where he does not seem to have a plan B, I think.
Yeah.
So it's all out attack for him. It's all or nothing for Spurs at the moment with the way they play. And I think with West Ham sitting back, and I think they have the ability to frustrate Spurs' creative players like Madison. And I think it will be tricky for them in that regard, which is why I have West Ham taking a point from that game. Then they have Spurs welcome Forest at home, and again Forest, one of the teams in a relegation battle, but again Spurs have the Champions League to play for. Uh, Taking that into factor, I would say, and with me predicting them dropping points at West Ham, I think they'll try to win it at Forest. So that is one of the one of the easier games they have coming up in terms of the quality of opposition towards the end of the season. So I think, yeah, I think they'll be focused on winning those games, the ones that they are expected to win. So I think that Forest game will be 3 points for Spurs.
It'll be interesting to see how Forest sort of respond to the points reduction. That is one, and it is one of those games immediately after the point reduction. So we'll have to see if they have a sort of a bounce from that. And interestingly, it's also Nuno Espirito Santo returning to Spurs. I don't know why I am so focused on these little context games. It might have nothing to do at all, but then it is something like adding a bit of context to the game. So I don't know, like if Nuno will have a point to prove himself and all those other things. But again, I'm going for Spurs win, as I have already told.
Then Spurs have Newcastle away, another tricky fixture. They have a lot of tricky fixtures coming up, Spurs. And while Newcastle have struggled this season, mostly because of injuries, I think. Uh, Again, Sven Botman out for the with an ACL injury, which is a big blow for them. Uh, Again, now Newcastle haven't been at their best, but they will want to prove themselves towards the end of the season. While they have, I don't think they have a chance of getting into the Europa League. They might be able to get into the European competition through the Conference League, but still, it'll be tough with the injuries they have. But since it's away from home for Spurs, uh, I think uh, I think Newcastle have a chance of taking points away from them in this fixture. So I have a draw. I predicted a draw.
I've gone for a win for Spurs again. I think I might be being too
Optimistic.
optimistic for, yeah, because I don't see them winning all four of their games. But then let's see.
Uh, then uh, then Spurs have City at home, and I've already predicted them to win that game. So yeah,
So they have a trip to Chelsea. Has that not been confirmed? I think it's not been confirmed because
yeah.
Chelsea are,
So yeah, they have the Chelsea game as well. So where that will fall will be interesting because
yeah.
after that they have City, Arsenal, and Liverpool all in a row. So whether Chelsea will be sandwiched in between those fixtures or before that fixture, I think they have four immensely tough fixtures to look forward to, and yeah, it'll be tricky for them.
And the City game has also not been confirmed. So there's a lot of uncertainty there,
Yeah,
right?
because of the Chelsea City FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, moving on
that
to
might be tricky for Spurs because they have two big games which they do not know the dates for towards the end of the season. Arsenal, Liverpool already consecutive games. So yeah, that's huge.
the next five fixtures for United. Brentford away. Now we've spoken about Brentford. It's away from home this time. Uh, Now, while history would recall the 4-0 thrashing that Eric Ten Hag got at the hands of Brentford last season, I think uh, after that United managed to find some sort of balance in their team, and Eric Ten Hag was able to get his team together after that game. But nah, and that was at home. Yeah, that was away as well at the GTech Stadium. So now they once again visit that, uh, and I have Brentford losing this game uh, because of United coming off the high of beating Liverpool in the FA Cup, and then with Brentford's recent form, they haven't won their last five fixtures. The home crowd has gone. a bit sour. Thomas Frank has been frustrated at them as well. Uh, and yeah, I think the environment around that club right now is not conducive to win such a big game. So I have United winning that.
Uh, it's interesting that you said earlier that the win against Liverpool would sort of give them a boost for the rest of the season. I sort of feel otherwise. Again, I don't think it's my bias, but then I feel like that result, it would be naive of United to sort of take too many positives out of that result, to be honest. Yeah, it is a win at Wembley against your bittermost rivals, but then that performance do not sort of show too much signs of progress for United. So I feel like they might get carried away by that one result for the rest of the season. And reality might hit them as soon as the trip to Brentford this weekend. And I have put it down as a draw for both. I mean, for both teams. I mean, it's a draw in the game, so 1 point each. And yeah, probably Van Tony to sort of give them some. I'm not being bitter,
So
but
after
yeah,
that, yeah. So United play Chelsea after that, away from home. Pochettino, Chelsea, unpredictable, inconsistent, not really much to play for this season except for pride, maybe. But United, on the other hand, could potentially make it to the Champions League. They have that uh, goal at least to achieve something towards the end of this season. And even though it's at Stamford Bridge, even though the crowd will be against uh, against United in that game, I think if United manage to get a goal in the opening minutes, I think they can turn the tide at the stadium and quieten the crowd to a certain extent. And then we've seen recently the home fans at Chelsea aren't really impressed with Pochettino and most of the players. So if the game is going against them, I think the crowd will put more pressure on them, and that will play in the hands of United, which is why I go with the United win.
yeah, I agree with you on that one. Like a lot of points that you have made is what like my thoughts are as well. And I have gone for a United win on this occasion. One thing I would like to point out is like how there is this like narrative that Spurs could determine who wins the league this season. Chelsea could decide who goes to Champions League this season because they are playing all three teams.
Yeah.
And like we have mentioned already, they can be unpredictable, they can be inconsistent. So you never know when they're gonna turn up and when they're gonna be this poor team that we have seen Chelsea be in this season. So it will all depend on which Chelsea turns up for the game. But on this occasion, I think it'll be United win at Stamford Bridge.
United then uh, face Liverpool at home, Old Trafford, replay of the recent fixture that we just saw. And once again, like I said, I think United have the quality to stifle Liverpool, and which is why I think it'll be a draw.
I mean, yeah, we have already gone through this.
Yeah.
I told you, like, after the defeat, I'm confident of getting a win at Old Trafford. It could come back to haunt me, but then let's see. I'm going all in. I'm putting my chips on it.
United then have Bournemouth away. Again, the Cherries easily easily going to survive the drop. There's no threat for them at the moment, which is why I don't think they'll pose much of a challenge to United, and I go with the United win.
Yep, it's the same for me. Bournemouth are in a safe spot right now. They are a good team, but I don't think they can like sort of spring surprises against teams in the top half of the table, like top six of the table. So this, I think, will be a United win as well. Yeah.
United then have Newcastle, a historic rivalry. They face them at home, and this time around, I have United winning, Newcastle losing. because I just think towards the end of the season, United will make a comeback. There's this feeling I have, I don't know why, but I think they will want to. They, I think they're determined to make it to the Champions League places after their disappointing end to the campaign in the UCL this time around. I think they'll want to be in the competition once again, and I think that team has the quality in their starting lineup to do so. Uh, and with the emergence of Mainu and a few other players, I think they have a young group of players who are determined as well and have improved their squad surprisingly, which is why I think they will have enough in the tank towards the end of the season to make a charge for the top four or the fourth place, that is. And I predict a win for them against Newcastle.
Yep, I have gone for a United win against Newcastle as well. I don't know, like Newcastle have been disappointing this season. I mean, a lot of it is down to injuries as well, like Bodman, and then a few other like good chunk of players have been injured in different points of the season. They have had the issue with Tonali as well, which who are supposed to like be the next step in their phase, and but then that has not worked out because of different reasons. And but yeah, on this occasion, it feels like United will get the win against Newcastle without any upsets.
And then the final five games of the season for these three teams. Uh, Villa have Bournemouth at home. I go with a Villa win. Easy.
Yep, same. Maybe not easy, but then I'm going for a 11 against Bournemouth at home.
Spurs play. So yeah, so Spurs have these few fixtures that aren't set at the moment with the City and Chelsea games not having a date at the moment. But yeah, they do have City, and I believe they'll win that game. Like I've said, I've already mentioned why. So yeah.
Yeah, we have done the prediction for the City game. We both think for some reason they will win,
Yeah.
but then yeah, lose. They might. I have put them down to lose against Arsenal and Liverpool, and then a draw against Chelsea. So that is 4 games, 4 points from 4 games. But then that might be enough to get them to the top four spots because I have them winning the first 4 games after international break. Let's see.
United have Sheffield United at home, and I think it'll be an easy win for them. I don't think Sheffield United can pose enough problems to them.
Yeah, you can't predict a United Sheffield United draw or a win at this point. You would be even for me, it would be deluded.
Then Villa have Chelsea at home. Again, Chelsea unpredictable. Uh, they're, I think they'll get a draw from that game, despite, I mean, you could argue historically Chelsea are the bigger team, but right now Villa are better than them. But still, I think Chelsea might have enough they have enough quality in their team to at least get a point away from home at Villa. So I go with the Chelsea win. Chelsea, sorry, a draw.
I have put it down as a win for Villa in this game. It is at home for Villa. Chelsea, again, inconsistent. You don't know which Chelsea are going to turn up. So I have gone for a Villa win, but then I would not be surprised if it turns out like what you have just predicted, because Chelsea are more than capable of getting a draw or even a win. But then Villa win it is for me.
Spurs have Arsenal, uh, and we've already mentioned. I think they'll get a point out of that. I think you
I
believe
think they'll
they'll lose
lose.
that game. No, you believe they'll lose that game, won't you?
Yeah.
Then the final three games, Villa start with Brighton away. Again, a tricky fixture, I think, for Villa, especially away from home. Brighton, while they aren't in their best vein of form, they still have a European competition to play for. They were in the Europa League recently, but got knocked out by Roma. And I think they'll want to be in that in one of those, either the Conference League or the Europa League once again for next season because it'll give them more experience in that competition. And I think they'll try to give Villa a tough game, and I think they'll come away. I think Villa will drop 2 points away from home.
That is again with the Villa. I would not be surprised if it turned out like what you have just said. But for me, I have put it down as a win for Villa. Again, they have the European games in between. You have to see how that goes. And Villa are not as stacked with their squad like your Arsenals and Cities are. So it is interesting to see how they manage. Do they prioritize one over the other? I would expect them to prioritize. If they're prioritizing at all, they would probably prioritize top four because that is more prestigious, I think, than a trophy. But then you don't know. Anyways, I'm going for a Brighton. I mean, Villa win against Brighton, although it is away from home.
You've already seen with Brighton how playing in a European competition can affect the squad. It can affect a team, especially if you don't have enough squad depth. And I think Brighton have suffered because of that this season. And I think Villa have to be careful as well. So yeah. As for Spurs, they have Liverpool away, which we already discussed. I have Liverpool winning that game, so Spurs drop points again.
Same for me. It's a win for Liverpool. Two consecutive
Uh,
defeats for Spurs.
yeah, as for United, they play Palace. Now Palace not much to play for this season. And I think United are one of those teams that have a pretty decent run of fixtures in the middle, and uh, Palace is just no. They have Burnley as well before that. Palace and Burnley are just a few of those fixtures. With Burnley this season, they have struggled, and I don't think they'll be able to do much against Manchester United. So I have them losing that, and then Palace as well. I feel will lose away from home. It's away from home for United, but still, I have United winning it.
With Burnley, I think out of the three teams that came up with promotion this season, Burnley were probably the team that people had most expectations for,
Yeah,
with company sort of changing things up at Burnley, the way they play and stuff, the players that they signed and stuff. There were like more expectations of them, but then they have certainly disappointed. They have not lived up to those expectations. I think they have found some sort of like a firepower in David Datro Fofana on loan from Chelsea. He has been scoring some goals, but again, I would expect United to get the win at Old Trafford on this occasion. But against Palace at Selhurst Park, I have put it down as a draw. Palace have not certainly received a manager bounce from bringing Oliver Glasner in, and I don't know. They probably do not have enough to play for at that point. I think they might be safe because with the amount of teams that there are already in the relegation battle, I feel like that might be one of those occasions where United fail to turn up and then Palace sort of take advantage. And especially if the likes of Eze and Olise are fit,
yeah,
I can see them taking a couple of points
yeah.
from United.
So for Aston Villa, it's Liverpool in the penultimate game. We've already discussed this. Liverpool are winning it, hands down. Uh, for Spurs, they have Burnley at home. Now, Burnley, we've discussed one of those teams that people had high expectations from. Vincent Company, with the way they played last season in the Championship, blowing past oppositions. But I think the Premier League is just a different kettle for these Championship teams. The gap in quality is massive, and I think that is evident with how teams that come up, who usually are great in the Championship, struggle in the Premier League. So I think it's interesting that they haven't sacked him. So I would think they are going to stick with him for another season in the Championship, and then if Company is able to get them back into the Premier League, I think they'll do that, which I think is is uh, is something that more teams should be looking at doing instead of just sacking managers left, right, and center. And I think if they stick with company, they'll have every chance to get back into the Premier League. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's the same. Burnley. I think, yeah, whatever you just said about Burnley is sort of sticking with company. I think it's a really fair point. I am not sure if company has the caliber to become like a top manager, but think, I think it would be better for Burnley to sort of stick with him even if they drop down and then sort of try and come back and then see how he takes the second
Yeah.
chance in the Premier League. But again, on this occasion, it's a win for Spurs against Burnley at home.
Next, Manchester United have Arsenal. We already discussed this again. I believe it'll be a draw at Old Trafford against Arsenal. So yeah.
And I believe it's going to be a win for United at Old Trafford against Arsenal.
So for the final games of the season for these three teams, I Villa have Palace away from home. Now it's interesting that all of these teams have their final games away from home, and it'll be, I think, uh, with Villa, I think they'll win against Palace. I don't think Palace have enough firepower at the moment to cause any issues to Palace. Plus, with the high line that Unai Emery plays, even though uh, Palace have a few quality players with pace, like you mentioned, Olise and Ize, but I still think Villa have enough quality to get past them. So I have it down as a Villa win.
Yeah, it's same for me. Again, by that time, I expect Palace to be safe and they would not have much to play for, while Villa would still be in that sort of race and try and end the season on a high. So it's a Villa win for me.
Now, Spurs have Sheffield United. You'd say they have the easiest, probably the easiest fixture going into the final game of the season. I have them winning that as well. But yeah,
Yeah, I think Sheffield United would most likely be relegated by that point.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't see them putting up a fight. But then it's interesting, I think it was a few years ago when Newcastle went down, they were confirmed to be relegated and they played Spurs in the final game and then they sort of blew Spurs away, didn't they? I don't know. It's a Premier League. Anything could happen. But then Sheffield
anything.
United, yeah. Oh, it's at Bramall Lane. Maybe we should go for that one because it might be empty after.
We could go. Yeah. On the other hand, United have Brighton away from home. Final game with potentially a Champions League place on the line. I think United will win it.
Yep, it's the same for me. Again, Brighton, I don't know. Maybe they have a European place to play for, but I think United would want it more than Brighton.
Yeah.
And it's a United win for me.
So that would leave us with Villa on 70 points, for me at least, United on 73, and Spurs on 72. So that would mean United finish fourth, Spurs are fifth, and Villa are sixth.
It's quite different for me. Okay, this is where we differ, huh?
Yeah.
So Villa have 71 points on my table. Spurs have 75. I
Oh.
think that is a bit too optimistic. It might be 73-ish max. And United have 70. So Spurs are finishing fourth, Villa fifth, and United sixth. I could very well be wrong. We'll have to come back to this at the end of the season and see what, how deluded I am.
No, that's a decent shout for Spurs to win, to finish fourth, to be honest. But I don't know. I have this feeling that United will do something towards the end of the season. And yeah, that Liverpool game just gave me a bit of belief, and maybe it will give those United players and fans a bit of belief as well, which I think they desperately need this season after everything they've been through. So yeah. Plus, Eric Ten Hag needs this. We've gone through it. Eric Ten Hag needs to at least get a Champions League place to. I think if he does not win the FA Cup and then does not make it to the top four, there is a high probability that the new owners will look for a new manager. So yeah.
Yep, fair point. I think that might be a good way to end this episode for right now, which have already gone too long. But
So those were our predictions. Just comment down what you think, who will win the league, who will make it to the top four. And yeah, that's it for today. See you next time.
see you next time.